Coast Guard Cutter Waesche has done an extremely successful patrol, and I want to thank Base San Diego as well for hosting us today. The crew of Waesche is offloading more than 39,000 pounds of cocaine worth more than $561 million behind me. That's just a small portion of what we've seized in fiscal year 16. This fiscal year, the Coast Guard seized nearly 417,000 pounds of cocaine, which is a new record for us, the most our service has ever stopped. It's a new record. It's an impressive record. I think it reflects the devotion to duty that our Coast Guard men and women have, but certainly it's not a cause for celebration. This cocaine represents a significant threat that our nation faces from violent transnational organized crime networks, not just from the drugs themselves, but from the people that operate those networks. Regretfully, the United States has one of the highest drug mortality rates in the world that accounts for 1 in 5 drug-related deaths across the globe. I'm sure that, like me, many of you have seen news and TV accounts of people that have overdosed in the car with their children with them. They never expected to overdose. They never expected to be addicts. They never expected to end up in that situation in life, and it's incredibly sad. Certainly, the grip of addiction is not bound by race or geography or socioeconomic class, and it impacts every single part of our society. Gangs and cartels and these illegal organizations that run drugs throughout the Western Hemisphere have developed well-organized crime networks. They've expanded their reach from South America into Central America and into North America that fuels a U.S. drug epidemic. Our counter-drug efforts off Central and South America are helping to slow what has become a tidal wave of narcotics that are flooding into the United States. Transnational organized crime networks are agnostic as to drug type. They will smuggle heroin, cocaine, marijuana, counterfeit pharmaceuticals, methamphetamines, you name it. They're in the business to smuggle it. And it's not just U.S. citizens who suffer at the hands of these dangerous criminal networks. El Salvador is a critical transshipment point for South American cocaine and heroin for the United States. It also has the highest murder rate in the world. Even sadder, gang violence has made Central America one of the most dangerous places to be a child, with El Salvador having the highest rate of child murder in the world, followed by their neighbor Guatemala. Our efforts to disrupt maritime smuggling routes help these nations combat violence and crime within their borders. When you're smuggling drugs, the most vulnerable time for you is to be caught at sea. And the reason for that is that the loads are the largest there and they're at their highest purity. Through helping stop these transshipments at sea, we've seen El Salvador's murder rate drop sharply in 2016 as criminal organizations have adjusted their smuggling routes, due in part to the surge of forces that we put into the Eastern Pacific. These same networks are equal opportunity employees of evil. They move drugs, weapons, cash, people. They undermine the rule of law. They undermine civil government. They undermine the opportunity for success and prosperity and security. It undermines the very foundations of civil society. The Coast Guard removed $5.6 billion worth of cocaine, and that's a wholesale number. That's $5.6 billion out of the pockets of gang lords, drug pens, and other violent heads of transnational organized networks. And they don't like it, because they're used to wielding unprecedented power and influence as they coordinate supply lines and criminal networks and violence and instability throughout the Western Hemisphere. From 2002 to 2011, information obtained from suspects apprehended by the Coast Guard contributed to the arrest and extradition of more than 75% of those drug kingpins. Furthermore, along with the 417,000 pounds of cocaine, we apprehended a record 585 smugglers this fiscal year. So your question might be, so what happens? And I would tell you also in this year and prior cases, we've had 77 smugglers that were apprehended by the Coast Guard sentenced to more than 800 years in prison. They're prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Florida, in Texas, in California, in New York. Our coordination with these district courts is a model of LE prosecution and law enforcement teamwork. It's a good model. It works. It's being replicated across the nation. I know we're fortunate to have with us here prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of California with whom we partner regularly. And without them, without the prosecution piece, our efforts would be completely fruitless. These prosecutions erode and undermine supply channels that are critical to the operations. 77 smugglers, 800 years. If you do the math, that comes out to be about 10 to 15-year sentence. So it's a fairly significant sentence. I'm certainly proud of the work our Coast Guard men and women aboard Waesche do, and those served around the world. I'm also proud of the network we use. It takes a network to fight a network. When I talk about a drug smuggling network, there's also a network on our side that involves prosecutors, intelligence, law enforcement professionals at sea, CBP, the Drug Enforcement Agency, all manner of agencies throughout the government working together. So we've set a record for fiscal year 2016, but our work is far from over. The more interdictions we make, the more we know, the more we learn, leads to more interdictions, more extraditions, more arrests, and more prosecutions. There's no one ship, no one agency, no one person that can do this on their own. Together, I think we continue our efforts both at home and abroad to reduce the illegal supply of drugs. Illegal supply is half the battle. The other half is demand. And we also are working hard at home to reduce demand through education and prevention and treatment. And I think we have an obligation to our children, to those that are coming up behind us, and to our neighbors in South and Central America to remain vigilant in this job. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce the Captain of the Coast Guard Cutter Waesche, Captain Jim Passarelli.
Thank you, Admiral Midgette. We greatly appreciate the support of the Coast Guard Pacific Area and the 11th Coast Guard District. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests and you, the members of the media. Waesche's most recent patrol was marked by near constant operations with 7 different drug interdictions in less than 2 months. Just to recap, today we will offload 39,000 pounds of cocaine with a street value of $561 million wholesale. Waesche alone seized more than 12,300 pounds of that cocaine worth $166 million and disrupted yet another $151 million in cocaine, thereby keeping it off America's streets. By far, our most noteworthy interdiction occurred on September 6, 2016 in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Central America. This was a seizure of a self-propelled, semi-submersible drug smuggling vessel, or SPSS, and it's a prime example of the whole-of-government approach to reducing the supply of illegal drugs, dismantling dangerous criminal organizations, and reducing demand here at home. This case was a coordinated effort between the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Southern Command, and the Departments of Defense, Homeland Security, Justice, and State. On the afternoon of September 6, 2016, a Maritime Patrol Aircraft, or an MPA, under the direction of the Joint Interagency Task Force and U.S. Southern Command, detected the SPSS underway in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Central America. At that time, Waesche was more than 250 nautical miles east of that vessel's position. The SPSS was tracked by the aircraft into darkness until it had to depart scene for low fuel. Waesche diverted and made best speed throughout the night to intercept. With only the last known position from the previous evening, Waesche's crew plotted a course for the vessel and tried to predict the intended target or landfall of that vessel's track. When a second MPA arrived on the morning, Waesche's crew vectored that aircraft to begin searching the estimated location. Our Coast Guard men and women face significant risks posed by these dangerous criminal organizations. Our crew preserved valuable evidence and kept millions of dollars of cocaine off America's streets, and I'm certain they would do it again in a heartbeat. We know our actions contribute to a much broader effort to dismantle the cartels and gangs that make up these transnational organized crime networks and keep the drugs off America's streets. Our mission has taken on a new importance as addiction grips our nation here at home. We are not simply trying to stop drugs or dismantle networks anymore. We're trying to save lives. The risks of facing down drug smuggling organizations and boarding sinking vessels at night is worth every second if we can save only one life. However, I'm certain our efforts today have done much, much more. Thank you again for